the Pediatric Lounge, a podcast taking you behind the door of the physician's lounge to get a deeper insight into just what docs are talking about today. From the clinically profound to the wonderfully routine and everything in between.
Hey, George, it's another Tuesday, a wonderful Tuesday, and we have a really phenomenal person. I don't know how he does what he does because he does a lot on the show today.
Yes, today we have Dr. Chris Peltier, and the topic of discussion, pediatrician, professor, business partner, CIN leader, and advocate. I didn't know all those words could go into one person's CV, but I guess it is.
He's also a husband and a dad.
Oh, yeah, I forgot about that. Take it away.
I'm excited to welcome Dr. Chris Peltier to the Pediatric Lounge today. I've heard first about Dr. Chris on Leah Gagino's Pediatric Meltdown podcast, where he shared fascinating insights about the independent pediatric practice and the future of the field. What caught my attention from his appearance on Pediatric Meltdown was his thoughtful discussion about the rewards and challenges of private practice, the importance of supportive peer networks, and how we can sustain our passion for pediatrics while navigating today's complex healthcare landscape. Dr. Peltier represents that perfect blend of clinical excellence and dedication to teaching the next generation of pediatricians. So I am thrilled to have him share his insights in the Pediatric Lounge today. Welcome, Chris. It's a joy to see you.
Guys, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm very excited. Thanks for having me.
If you listen to the podcast once, you know that we always ask you, why did you become a pediatrician?
That's a great question. I think I knew when I started medical school a long time ago that I was going to do something primary care related. I knew that I did not have the technical skills, nor really probably the personality and that sort of drive to be doing something surgical. So then I started medical school, get your clinical rotations, and just the more adult medicine I did, the less I liked it. And I was just happiest when I did pediatrics. And I'm very lucky. I trained in Cincinnati. I got to do my rotation at Cincinnati Children's, and there's something about kids, right? I joke, I think I'm just a big child anyway. So it was the perfect sort of career for me, but kids they're just fun. And I think pediatrics attracts a certain type of person, both physician as well as ancillary staff. And it's just a joy. It's just a joy to go to work.
So you're like me. You remember that Toys R Us jingle? I don't want to grow up. I'm a Toys R Us kid. My jingle
exactly.
Is, I never grew up. I'm just a kid.
That's right. I feel the same way.
Tell us about your independent practice and, how many partners do you have and why do you do it that way?
Yeah. I work for a partner in Pediatric Associates of Mount Carmel, which is an independently owned private practice in sort of suburban Cincinnati, Ohio. We have been around since 1972. And we currently have, I got to count because it's changing. Next month, we're having a new doc join. But right now, we have 9 partners, 10 full-time pediatrician who will become a partner. We're getting ready to add our 11th full-time pediatrician. Next month, we have 1 part-time pediatrician that works 2 days a week, as well as we have a full-time triple board, adult psych, child psych, pediatric boarded child psychiatrist who does 100% child psychiatry for us. Again, I've been in practice for 26 years now. I've been a partner for 24 of those. Our philosophy is, and our feeling about independent pediatrics, I think we are very intentional when we interview and look to hire a new physician. We try to look for somebody that wants to be in it for the long haul, that ideally is going to be able to settle with roots in our community, that they're going to be able to stay and grow with the practice, become a partner, and then eventually, as partners retire, then ascend and take over some of the management.
So your management structure, do you have an executive committee that does most of the managing? Because 9 or 10 people is difficult to get them all to make a decision.
It definitely is. So we have 1 managing partner. He's been our managing partner for over 20 years. I've had 2 managing partners in my career. Our first one retired probably about 20 years ago. And that's when my partner, Mike Chamberlain, took over. And he did the day-to-day work. He gets 1 day a week protected time for management. He also does a lot of work outside of the office. And so has some extra compensation for that, but pays the bills, follows all of our trends and everything, and then makes suggestions. We do make decisions as a group. We meet every week. And I think that's one of the things that's kept us around for so long, is that every Monday morning from 7:30 to 8:30, the partners meet along with our managers, our practice manager, our front office manager, our billing manager, and our clinical manager. We meet every week, where sort of the first part of the meeting is devoted to any clinical issues. Hey, I saw this kid. I'm not sure who I should send them to or what should I do? Hey, if you're on call this week, this kid's out there. He's been sick. This may be what's going on. And then the rest of the meeting is also devoted to business and running the practice.
So when you guys make a decision, is it a consensus-driven process? Like 6 out of 9 have to agree?
Yeah. Most of the time, we talk about things and it comes to like an informal consensus. And if nobody voices opposition, say, so it sounds like we're all in agreement and we're doing this. There have been times though, we've had to make some much tougher decisions. And so we use a majority. So if there are a majority, so 5 out of the 9 partners vote, that's going to be how things will be. And we don't usually do that all that often. Again, most of the time we're going to come to consensus. It may take us a couple of weeks if it's not an urgent issue and we're trying to figure it out and get more information. But I think it's the longevity of it too. We have many of our partners. I have 1, 2, 3, 4. There's 5 of us that have been there for almost 25 years. And then we have another partner that's been there 15 and then 10. And we've had a few younger physicians. So we have a nice range of sort of experience in our practice.
What is your experience with finding that physician that is in it for the long haul?
So I can only speak for us. We have been very lucky. Like I said, we have only had ever in our practice, one person leave our practice that essentially didn't retire. And so for us, we've been very successful in that. It may mean we wait if we hire candidate, if we're interviewing candidate and we just don't feel like it's the right person and we're not in dire straits where we could maybe wait a year, we may wait a year because we really want to have the right person that hopefully is going to be in our practice long term.
This is a really stupid question, but do you basically hire betas and not alphas? Because my personality is I see something needs to be done. It's going to get done today. That's an alpha trait. And I think if I had to wait for 9 people to agree with that, I would hit every wall in the office before the day was over.
Yeah, that's a really good question. I don't think I've ever really thought of it as alpha and beta. I think we just have been around long enough. We also have the same philosophy and how we clinically, we're all sort of the same philosophy. And I think we all have the same sort of vision. It does take some time. I joke that our Monday morning meetings are like Sunday family, right? We're one big, I sometimes joke that we're one big happy dysfunctional family, right? It's not that we don't have squabbles. It's not that we don't have differences of opinions. And sometimes it just takes some time to just iron that out, just like it would in any family.
Because I'm a purist. I think that every policy statement that comes out of AP should be like the Supreme Court. This is the policy. This is the consensus policy. And then there should be someone should always disagree and write a dissenting opinion.
That's really interesting. Yeah.
And then both should be published so people have an opportunity to say, okay, in my practice with my patient, with this patient in this day, I'm going to do this, not that. Or, I'm going to do what they said. It seems to work. But it would be so wonderful if everything we did in science came along with a dissenting opinion, a respectful one that says, this is why I dissent. It doesn't mean that they're wrong. It doesn't mean that they're evil. I just dissent because of this. Maybe people should pay attention to this and that. I was just really, because that's how science advances. When we have dissenting voices, and sometimes the dissenting voices are nuts.
Exactly.
Who was the first person that said that the earth wasn't flat and he almost got hung?
Yep.
But he was right.
Exactly. And it's interesting. I never thought about it in the realm of policy statement, but I think you hit on a really good point, Herb. I think there is not so much to that degree, but because it's going on right now, if you've ever been to the AAP's, what used to be the annual leadership forum, it's now the annual leadership conference where they go through the process of resolutions, right? So there is that process where you can locally dissent and they have the reference committee calls. And then if you're one of the voting persons at the meeting, it's a give and take back and forth, pro con, and the academy has it there, but that's a very interesting thought to have like a dissenting opinion on a policy statement.
Yeah. Not that I read a lot of the Supreme Court opinions, but once in a while, like this last one on the task force on preventive services.
Yeah.
And it was interesting to how they go through it. And they're like, we're not saying they're bad people. We're not saying that this or that. We're just telling you the Constitution says this and that. And this is what it is. And the HHS secretary has the right to fire and hire at will. And that's the end of the story. You might not like it, but that's what the Constitution says.
Sure.
They don't say it like this because I'm too blunt and I'm not.
Right.
But they basically say, if you don't like what the HHS secretary did, ask your congressman to impeach him. That's what's in the Constitution. And then vote the current administration out. That's the solution.
Yep. Exactly.
But I like that. This is what we're thinking. This is why we came to this conclusion. And we know that not everybody's going to be happy and we're not going to always be right. I have some differences with the Leadership Council now, but I won't mention them on air.
Fair enough.
Now, you also do a lot of research in the office.
I do.
Why are you involved in research?
Clinical research in our office goes back, almost 25 years. And the person that really brought it to our office was my very first managing partner before our current managing partner. And really, when we decided to do it, and then I took over and I said our site PI. So we do clinically sponsored trials. We do what we do. So most of our trials over the years have involved mostly vaccine trials. We've done some infant formula trials. We've done some medication trials. We've done some asthma, some GERD, some constipation. We've actually done some device trials. There was one that never came to fruition where it was collecting spit to diagnose strep throat. There was some interesting things, and they would have to chew on a piece of cotton. It was very interesting. But I think we really ended up getting into research for a couple of reasons. Number one, I think it's an opportunity to really help our patients, especially when you're doing a treatment study, that you can maybe offer them a treatment that they would not currently have available in another setting. I do think, and boy, it's never been more obvious as right now, but we need to keep advancing science, right? So I think we feel strongly that this is how science works, right? They're developing new products, testing them, and advancing. I think back to, I started practice, I think 2 years into my practice, Prevnar 7 came out, right? So the first pneumococcal conjugate. A few years later, we were actually one of the sites that did the Prevnar 13 study. So it was really cool to be a part of that and watch that and then see it ultimately get licensed. And now, of course, we have several other pneumococcal vaccines. And then while it's not a huge thing, it is a little bit of an alternate stream of income. We do not make a lot of money on our research, but we do make a little bit. We definitely pay our costs and we make a little extra too. So again, it's just another alternative stream of revenue. Sometimes you can't control the ill season. So it just helps again with some of the financials.
I think it's important because pediatricians are very kind. In the US, the pediatricians are very kind. That's not true of the pediatricians around the world. Where I trained in Costa Rica, the pediatricians had the personality of surgeon. I mean, those morbidity rounds, they went at each other with knife guns and tanks.
Wow.
Public cutdowns of discussing an issue or a case at the children's hospital. It's just such a different personality.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
But I think universally, the pediatricians are some of the smartest people in the world. And I think research, for me at least, allows me the opportunity to learn new things, which motivates me a lot more than seeing another strep throat.
I completely agree. And I didn't mention this, but it's also, again, I've been lucky, and we'll talk a little bit about some of the things I've been able to do in my career. I knew when I was a resident, I knew I wanted to go into private practice. Right? I knew I wanted to practice. I had been a chief resident, so I had actually gotten some taste of some academics, especially medical education. And that's where I think I fell in love with medical education. And I was lucky enough to join a practice that really embraced medical education and brought medical students and residents into the practice so that I was able to do that. But doing research, even though I love being a private practice doc, it helps scratch that itch of a little bit of academics. You're doing some studies, and I've actually got to help publish some studies and be a part of some abstracts from some of the studies we've been a part of. So that's been a nice sort of personal thing for me.
Yeah.
So how do you deal with physicians that are part of this study, whatever it may be, and their comment, I'm already busy. You want me to fill out a form? You want me to do this? I can't do it. I'm too busy.
Yeah. Again, we only recruit only within our practice. It's a very controlled setting. And again, It's really just been part of our culture. We've been doing it for over 25 years. And I try to protect my sub-Is as much as possible. Like I try to make them have to do as little work as they have to do. So I try to protect them from that. There are trainings they have to do. And yes, we all grumble when we have to do training modules, but ultimately kind of coming back and having that conversation of the why we're doing this. And it helps our patients and it helps the practice. And I think that sort of helps move people along.
Okay.
So I have a personal, not so personal story to share.
Sure.
It just happened yesterday. So I speak on behalf of Sanofi on early screening to prevent decay.
Yep.
And I was out in Long Island. When was I in Long Island, George? Was it summer of last year? I think so.
Yeah.
Summer of last year. And every time you speak to doctors, people should push back. I'm being paid by industry to talk about this.
Sure.
And whenever you want to do something new to your patients, you should make sure it's safe. And then you should make sure that it's going to do them good and not harm. So I don't get upset when they push back. But people push back. We had a conversation. It was great. And then yesterday, George's partner, who is boarded in pediatrics, obesity, and lipidology, sent out a mass email, and I've been adopted. I'm the mascot at RBK Pediatrics, so I copies of the emails. And he says, guys, I think it's really important for you guys to hear this story. We had a new patient, 9-year-old, that doctor saw, had some routine labs, and the hemoglobin A1C was 6.5, I think it is. Not diabetic, not stage 3 insulin dependent.
Right.
And his BMI is 80%. Sent him to the endocrinologist, who said, stop eating carbohydrates and come back in 3 months. Came back to see me, Dr. Riley, and I did a fasting insulin, which was not elevated. So all the kids who have insulin resistance will have very high insulin or C-peptides in the morning. So I think this is not a type 2 diabetic. This is a type 1, and I ordered the autoantibodies.
Yep.
And 3 out of the 4 are positive. He just saved that kid from decapitation.
Exactly.
And as you say, when you're doing research, you get mentally stimulated and rewarded.
Yep.
I feel terrible for the kid, but I feel so happy that I got the opportunity to have this conversation, and that at least one kid is not going to end up in decay.
And that's why you do it. It's when we talk about vaccine, again, we do a lot of vaccine, and you're just talking about as new vaccines are being developed and the impact that they have. It's interesting you talk about pushback a little bit, obviously from both research as well as being on some advisory boards over the years, have worked with industry. And just like anything, I think there's good and bad, but I think industry can actually be very helpful. At the end of the day, all of us are trying to make money to raise our families, right? Yes, we care about kids, but we charge for our services, and we have to pay our employees. We have to take care of our families. It's not the primary reason we do it. And I know obviously that's one of the biggest, I think, raps against industry, that it's all money. I do think, especially the scientists, and getting to know the scientists that work for industry, they're in it to help people. And I worry, I was talking to a scientist that works for an industry, and at some point, the way we're headed, right? I think the only funding for research is going to come from industry, right? NIH funding's been slashed and halted, and industry research that's sponsored by, funded by industry may be the only avenue for research going forward.
So I don't share the tear for NIH funding going away in certain areas. They do a lot of studies that are just absolutely useless, and universities are charging 70 to 100% overhead. There's no way any one of the three of us, having owned a business, would ever pay a contractor 100% overhead.
Exactly.
The only worry is that if only industry funds the studies, they have an end goal in mind. Like Sanofi is big into immunologicals and diabetes right now.
Yep.
They don't really care to give me money to study what works on obesity.
Yeah, exactly.
And other than Novo Nordisk and Eli Lilly, Nobody really cares in obesity with children. So if you're going to see what works in children, then you need the government to step in because there's they don't have a product in that area. So they're not going to spend money in research and development.
Nope, you're exactly right.
So it is, and at least I'm going to talk I'm going to speak for George. George and I are huge opponents of private equity in pediatrics.
Yep.
They toxic. But it's not because they're evil. They use the pharma model, which is I'm going to invest in 10 drugs, $10 billion. I don't care if 9 never make it to market. I just need one of them to be a $3 or $4 billion drug for the next 10 years. And I got plenty of money to do more research and development.
Yep, exactly.
Private equity does the same thing. I'm going to invest in George's practice. I'm going to invest in Chris's practice. I'm going to invest in some idea Herb has got. I don't care if George and Chris go out of business and that community doesn't make any money and doesn't have any care. I made my money in tenfold on what I invested in Herb. That's all I care about. And I got a 5-year or 7-year timeline, which is not the timeline pediatrics has or communities have. And then you must have phenomenal people skills as well as a huge EQ, because you also are part of the Tri-State Child Health Services, and you're on the board of directors and the VP of Medical Affairs. And that's a huge group with hospitals, pediatricians, and 2 states.
Actually, 3 states. So Tri-State Child Health Services is the name of our Cincinnati area, tri-state area, really, because Cincinnati in geography sits right on the border between Kentucky and Indiana. So we have pediatricians from mostly greater Cincinnati, northern Kentucky. We have a few from Indiana. We're starting to expand a little bit into Kentucky. We've got a practice from Lexington that's going to be joining. And it's essentially, it's a clinically integrated network. We're actually celebrating our 30th anniversary. It was founded in 1995. Really, the goal of Tri-State is to improve the care of the children in the tri-state area, provide quality care at a lower cost. And we essentially, it's a collaboration between independent pediatricians and Cincinnati Children's Hospital. And so that includes, there's really 4 member groups. So there's the independent pediatricians, there's the Cincinnati Children's primary care physicians, there's the Cincinnati Children's specialists, and then the hospital itself is represented as well. And PHO has done lots of quality work over the years. For many years, they did a very large asthma cohort study, where recently they've been doing some work in depression and screening in depression. I have now been medical director for about 2 years. It's been about my 2-year anniversary. And we have gone through a little bit of a redesign. We've built our operations team and developed certain cohorts that pediatricians need to focus on. So right now, we're focusing on mental health, depression, anxiety. We're still doing asthma work, constipation, right? So the goal is we should be treating most constipation we should be treating in our offices. They don't need to go to see a pediatric gastroenterologist. We need to save them for my kids with EE or other things that I can't manage, and that helps save payers, right? Because it's going to be less expensive and probably better to keep them in the medical home. We're also doing primary recurrent headaches. And then we're developing a cohort on obesity. So really, that's a beast in and of itself. And we're trying to figure out how to tackle that. We're going to look at some dental work. We're also doing some work in the perioperative space. So going to work with our anesthesia colleagues in Cincinnati Children's, and how can we help provide education to both pediatricians and families, increase the rate of same-day surgery cancellation. So maybe the parents didn't quite understand what NPO meant, or the family calls the pediatrician because they're sick. Should they go to the surgery? So those are all the things we're working on. And we really do, we develop educational modules that we send out to our members. And then we also do quality improvement work. So we've just embarked on a Part 4 MOC, large scale network wide anxiety project, looking at increasing screening of anxiety at every child visit for kids 12 to 17, as well as screening at all visits related to anxiety. And then obviously some of our outcomes we're looking at are decreased ED utilization, decreased hospitalizations for anxiety, very similar to what we did with depression, where we did see a decrease in both ED visits and hospitalization. It's really a unique, not only for patient care, education, quality improvement, but again, especially for those of us in independent practice. And one of the reasons I think we're still have many. We currently just saw 27 independent practices in the greater tri-state area, because through the PHO, we are able to share PHO network level contracts. We have very good contracts with private insurance, with the exception of Anthem. Anthem is completely separate, and we're trying to work with them. And then, of course, our managed Medicaids. But it's a win-win for practices, for the patients. Yes, again, but George, you go back to that question about research. Why do I do this? Why do I have to do this QI project? Why do I have to fill out? Why do I have to watch these educational videos? It's because by doing this, it allows us to get you a really good payment rate. So at the end of the day, and obviously we want you want to take care of your kids and your learning, but ultimately from a financial standpoint, that has really been helpful in keeping independent pediatrics somewhat strong in our area. We are lucky. We have not had private equity come into our area yet. I get emails a couple of times a week, but not that I know of, and I haven't seen it a lot in our area. And I don't see it a lot in either Central Ohio or Northern Ohio either, but.
And you share their testament to my slogan, do good quality medicine and the money will follow.
Yep, exactly. Couldn't agree more.
Yeah. And you share with me that most of the contracts out in Ohio are fee for service.
Yeah, we actually don't have any value-based contracts. We do for our managed Medicaid. Cincinnati Children's has essentially an ACO called HealthVine that is responsible for all of the managed Medicaid lives in Southwest Ohio. My practice becomes, again, we're a private practice, but we take about 25% Medicaid. We're probably the largest independent practice that takes Medicaid. We feel like it's our mission, right? We want to try to take care of everybody. Obviously, can't take care of 50% Medicaid. We wouldn't be able to probably survive that. But there are some value-based incentives through our managed Medicaid. But on a private insurance rate, we don't have any value-based contracts right now.
You're so lucky.
Right.
But when you say what you're doing is it just makes my wheels turn, like with obesity and mental illness, because what people don't understand, and I get very political, but I can't help it. What people don't understand is that if you wanted to change anxiety and depression, it doesn't happen in the pediatrician's room.
Yep.
And a person that showed this in the most beautiful way, and I'll repeat his name over and over, I call him the grandfather of happy psychology, but it's positive psychology. He's at UPenn, Marty Seligman. And he runs a resiliency center for children. And they have shown over and over again that you can train late elementary school, early middle school teachers to teach the classroom like exercises like weightlifting. People teach you how to do it, or running, or your mind. And they decrease the number of anxious and depressed children. And it cost pennies on the dollar compared to what it costs to see me get on Lexapro and then go to talk therapy once a week for the next 6 months.
Yep.
And we don't implement it because no one's watching. And it's so frustrating. Now you're extending to more of Kentucky. Cooper Winterhart is that the chair president of all the diabetes program at UK, the Pediatrics. And they screen the kids because they have an outpatient program. So they know that you're going to need insulin, and they're following you and they're educating you. And when it comes time to actually need the insulin or the insulin pump, you've already met the team. You don't have to go to the emergency room. You don't have to be admitted to the PICU. Everything is done outpatient. And that saves so many beta cells, which correlates with great outcomes. But not only does that do that, it saves so much money and so many PICU admissions and so much trauma to the families.
Yep.
And if you could just implement that like through your CIN. Imagine the difference. Now, the intensivist would be a little upset because the intensive care unit closest to me at Fairfax, and Dr. Ron is excellent. She says, I don't care. You can test everybody, Herb. Screen everybody, please. Go to churches, screen everybody. 10% of my business in the PICU is DKA. I would rather never see it again.
Yep. Exactly. Yeah, we're building a pretty big multidisciplinary working group. So obviously we have general pediatricians, we have obesity, trained medicine, pediatric folks. We just recruited our endocrinologist from Cincinnati Children's. We have a pediatric surgeon. We're very intentional in who we try to get involved with the PHO board. So our pediatric surgeon, who's on our board of directors, runs the bariatric surgery program at Children's. So we've gotten her involved, right? So we're really and then to your point, I also getting a psychologist from our obesity center because they completely agree.
So we don't have any of those resources, and so I think what is inexpensive in works is physical therapy,
Yep.
because it's already covered by Medicaid, and nutritional and motivational coaches, because they're less expensive. And so
exactly,
you can't have that kid check in 20 minutes with a nutritional coach and 20 minutes with a motivational coach once a week.
Yep.
Where we don't have the workforce to do that, we would go bankrupt. If I spent an hour with an obese kid,
exactly. Yep.
we would go bankrupt. So we can't do it. So we have to work workforce multipliers. But I think that's where the future of medicine. And what people forget, and I hate, everybody's got bills to pay except George. He's independently wealthy at this point. But when you identify children at risk through your EHR and you recall them and you do interventions that will improve care, you make money.
Yep.
And you change the trajectory of a child's life. And so it's awesome.
Yep. No, I completely agree.
I can run a report of your practice and find out how many children in your office are dysglycemic. And then recall them, do the autobody testing, see which ones are going to be type 1 and which ones are insulin resistant that need to get into physical therapy so that they improve.
Yep.
Kids benefit.
Exactly.
Society benefits. It's wonderful.
Yep.
Now, amongst all these other things that you do, you also just recently served as the chapter president for the AAP Ohio.
Yep.
Level set, what is the AAP Ohio and why did you do it? And what did you come away with that you think was a really big win?
Yeah, it's a great question. So I'd say probably the last 10 years of my career, I've been really dipping my toe into much more advocacy. And I really started out very, very minimally in the chapter. I don't know, gosh, it's probably 15 years ago. An email went out. They had gotten a grant from Save Our Site Ohio. Then they had developed some curriculum that really was meant for family practice residents, teaching them how to screen preschool vision screening. And they needed somebody to take it on the road. And so I traveled around and presented. Again, I love medical education. I love to teach. So it's perfect for me. I did this little project. It was great. Then that led to something else. Then that led to something else. And next thing I know, I'm on the board. And, next thing I know, sort of in the leadership track. I'm finishing up my final year. I've been on the board of directors for the chapter for 10 years. So I'm finishing that up next year. I'm currently the immediate past president. So I did 2 years as president of Ohio. And I think the reason I really got involved is, look, we can do a lot for our kids in our practice, maybe even in our communities, but trying to improve health at a much broader level is, I think, what got to want to be more involved. I was president from 22 to 24. So we were coming out of COVID. When I was vice president, our president, who's a fantastic critical care doc, interviewing was not her interest. So I ended up becoming the face of our chapter during those 2 years during COVID. And that's where I honed my media and advocacy skills. I'm very like our chapter CEO has been actually her 20th year, and she's probably one of the most longest tenured chapter CEOs or executive directors, and really runs our advocacy section along with a couple of pediatricians and our lobbyists. And I would say, interestingly, thinking about, there's a couple of things that I'm really proud of when I think about those 2 years. One of the biggest things was we successfully advocated for about a 6% increase in Medicaid payments to primary care. For years in Ohio, other codes were increasing reimbursement, increasing payment, others those. procedural, but not primary care. And in some cases, some of those increases were as much as 20%. So that was a huge win for the pediatricians in Ohio. The other sort of thing that really happened in Ohio was soon after the Supreme Court overturned Roe v. Wade, state of Ohio pretty much enacted a ban on pretty much all sort of reproductive rights, as many states did. There was a story in the news where a very young child in Ohio had to travel to Indiana. She had been raped and had gotten pregnant and had to go to another state for treatment. And there was a grassroots group of pediatricians that actually was centered in Cleveland that really started this movement of trying to get a constitutional sort of amendment on the ballot to reinstate reproductive rights, and wanted us to sign on. And that took a lot of discussion amongst the board. That we had some people who were one or two board members who very pro-life and were comfortable with that. And when we did this, we actually, obviously some feedback from our members, they didn't agree with that. But really, I think at the end of the discussion for the board, it was really about reproductive rights and services for our adolescents, and that we felt very strongly, and we battle with vaccine issues all the time, right? That really government doesn't belong in the exam room. That's a discussion between your healthcare provider and the patient. And so we were the only sort of state medical agency that took this on. Obviously, none of the Children's Hospital, none of the other state medical associations. And the ballot initiative passed. So again, those were some treacherous waters to navigate. But I think in the end, health for our adolescent population is better because of that.
That's wonderful. I do have
Reliance. You have a good alliance with the hospital system.
We do. Yeah, we're very lucky. In Ohio, we have 7 children's hospitals. So we have some very strong children's hospitals. We do. Yep.
Wow.
And so when you talk about it, the two thoughts came to my mind. One is that you have to be careful when we talk about the government not intruding to the exam room. Because the reason most people vaccinate, unfortunately, is because they can't go to public school unless the government intrudes into our relationship.
That is true.
You live by the sword, you die by the sword.
Except in Ohio, where even though the government requires it, you can have a philosophical exemption and basically say, I don't believe in vaccines. I'm just not going to do it. And you can still go to school. Yeah.
Yeah. You can't spare everybody. I mean,
Curious, Chris. So you said you have 7 children's hospital systems around.
Yep.
Why did you pick the one you picked?
because it's in his neighborhood.
Oh, it's in the neighborhood. We said
Cincinnati. He's at Cincinnati Children's, and he's in Cincinnati.
Yeah, thank you. I can tell you. So, George, I grew up in Cleveland. I went to undergrad and medical school at University of Cincinnati. I did move away briefly, short distance. I did my residency at Riley Children's Hospital in Indianapolis. But really, Cincinnati, I had connections there. I knew. Funny, I think one of the reasons I'm so passionate about, there's many reasons I'm passionate about it, but about community preceptors taking learners is when I was a fourth-year medical student, I did a month in my practice that I now have been a part for 26 years. And had I not done that, I probably wouldn't have gotten this. I mean, they knew me. I spent a month with them, and I knew the practice, and I knew this was the kind of practice I wanted to be in. And so it worked well. And my wife and I moved back to Cincinnati. Yeah. And then we have Cincinnati Children's. And so that's why our CI is with Cincinnati Children's. But yeah, the Ohio Hospital Children's Association and the Ohio AP worked very closely together. We're usually advocating for many of the same issues. There's some issues that really just affect the hospitals, and the AAP doesn't weigh in a whole lot, but we often work together.
I have bad experiences with Indiana, so I'm so sorry you spent 3 years at Riley.
It was actually 4 because I was a chief.
My God. You're scarred for life. And you moved on, in the way of saying things, and you're taking roles at the national level, the AP National. What are you doing there, and why are you doing it?
Actually was doing them concurrently. So while I was also doing things with the Ohio AP, I had some involvement with national. Obviously, when you're a chapter president or a vice president, you're highly integrated with national, right? In fact, when I was vice president, we actually would they used to have a call once a month with all the chapter presidents, all the executive directors, the board, chapter president, or the national president. During COVID, that ended up being it was almost like therapy. And now I think it's maybe every 2 weeks or once a month. Now that I'm not president, I don't attend that anymore. But so you have you do a lot of work with, on that level. For about 8 years was on the executive committee for the Council on Community Pediatrics. I had actually two mentors. One was a senior partner of mine who's since retired. The other one, a retired pediatrician in Columbus, who is our advocacy chair, has been involved with the Ohio AP for a very long time. He was on the executive committee of the Council on Community Peds, and for the spot that opened up, he was the education chair. They were looking for an assistant education chair. It's like, you would be perfect for this. You should throw your name in it. I ended up getting it. So we created all of the education programs for the council. So we would do the Section H program that you do at NCE every year. We would do other education webinars throughout the year. And then when he rolled off, I ended up getting voted on to the executive committee, and I took her as education chair. I did that for about 6 years. For me, it was a combination of two things that I really love: community pediatrics, as well as medical education, right? So it was, again, a perfect opportunity for me. And COCP, they do amazing work. There's been a lot of things that have grown out of them. When I first joined the council, that was 10 years ago, there was a lot of work going on immigrant health. That sort of took off that they actually spun off, and they now have their own section. So, let's evolve over time. You talk about policy statement, right? So COCP is responsible for pretty much all of the social determinant of health policies. So the poverty policy statement, the housing insecurity, the transportation insecurity. We're in the process right now of revising the community pediatrics policy statement and really trying to think about, what does being a community pediatrician in 2025 mean, right? What are the skills and what does a community pediatrician need to do? So that was very rewarding. I met a lot of incredible pediatricians, some lifelong friends on that committee. The other thing I currently do for National AAP, again, no big surprise, it's education related. I am on the planning group for the AAP's Practical Peds course, which if you've been to, right, sort of this bread and butter general pediatrics lectures. We get 6 subspecialist topic experts. They present lectures over about a 3-day period, half day. They're usually in really nice places like Hilton Head or Orlando or San Diego. I'm on the planning group, and then we get to moderate one of those a year. So again, I get to learn a lot from subspecialists. I get to interact with pediatricians. They're really good conferences.
Yeah, they are. They really are. They're 2 or 3 days, and always in a nice place and not overwhelming.
Yep. Exactly.
NC is overwhelming. I can't.
It is. It really is.
I don't go because I look at the pamphlet. I'm like, I don't know where I would go. I'm done. I close it and I walk.
Yeah. Yep.
Then, what do you think the future of pediatrics is?
That's a really good question. I think about it a couple of different ways. One of the other things that I've been involved with nationally is the pediatric workforce issue. If you look back at the 2024 match, pediatrics had that horrible nosedive where we had been cruising along about 97 to 98% spots filled. We dipped all the way down to around 92%. And I think that sort of scared a lot of us, what's going on. And it got a little bit better last year, but it still was below where it had been. So really trying to figure out ways to increase the number of medical students that are interested in pediatrics. And they're really doing that is being organized by the organization that's the medical school pediatric department chairs. And then obviously the AAP is involved, the academic pediatric associations involved, the Council on Medical Student Education and Pediatrics is involved. And really looking as far as how do we interact with grade school kids and talk to them, having pediatricians come to a local school and talking about what life's like as a pediatrician and all the cool things we get to do, all the way really through practicing physicians. And one of the things that I've been very passionate about in the academy is trying to get the academy to support community pediatricians that precept. I through being a faculty in Cincinnati Children's, I've had the pleasure of being able to go to the Pediatric Academic Society meetings, the Council on Medical Student Education annual meeting, where there's fantastic sort of faculty development that teaches pediatricians how to be excellent adult educators. Most general pediatricians they're not going to those meetings. And has traditionally been very little of that at NCE, despite it being such a big conference. There's been very little how to be a better educator. So in 2023, sorry, George, I'm going to bring up the ALF for a second. I drafted a resolution asking the AP to do some work together, come together and support community pediatricians from really two ways, right? So helping to develop and disseminate some faculty development curriculum, how to teach pediatricians how to give feedback, how to do evaluation so that they can be more comfortable teaching so that they'll be willing to take learners. But then also, and this is really probably more from the chapter standpoint, because they're really estate dependent, looking at financial incentives, right? How can we help? Is there some financial incentives, be it tax break? Off-score medical schools will pay thousands of dollars for you to precept, as do some nurse practitioner schools. There's not a lot of money. Some UME, there's some medical schools that will pay a small amount. There is no real money for taking residents in your office. So through that, we developed through the AP a working group, the Community Preceptor Support Group. We started a listserv. We met twice at NCE, had standing room only, which was really good. Mark Damonte was there and Sandy Chung, who was instrumental in helping us get this kicked off. They came at the beginning of that session and were shocked that we had the room full. And we were like, see, we've been telling you this. People need this and want this. We actually just found out today, we wrote a perspectives piece for the AP Journal that'll be published in the next few months, again, talking about why it's important to support community preceptors. So this is one of the things that I'm leading a working group on, is through the AP and through this other group, trying to develop some curriculum that sort of distributed through the AP to help preceptors, to help pediatricians be better preceptors, so that we can have learners in our office and they can see what life is like in community pediatrics and independent pediatrics, right? To show them that, look, you can be an independent pediatrician and survive, and look at all the cool things that we get to do. Then there's the other side of that. What's patient care going to look like in the future? And I don't know. I think I know in our practice that we've seen more and more of our patients that go to urgent cares for acute care. They feel like that's instantaneous for them. They can go when they want to, despite the fact that our practice is open from 8 a.m. till 8 p.m. and we have plenty of same day ills. So that's often in its situation. I almost wonder if we're going to become more like internists, right? Think about how much mental health I do. We've talked a lot about obesity and type 2 diabetes, right? Type 2 diabetes. We're going to see more and more kids with this. And I think that's where, along with doing well child visits, I think that's what we'll be doing more of. It'll be interesting to see what happens, obviously, with private equity. And we worry, and I'd say our group of independent pediatricians here in Cincinnati, right? We want to keep pediatricians independent, and that gets harder and harder. I think a lot of that has to do with trying to teach your younger partners how to be involved with the business to get them to care, so that you have a succession plan. Many of the practices that have sold here in Cincinnati was either really small practices that were struggling and they only had 2 partners and they couldn't recruit somebody to take over. Even a larger practice that really, just for whatever reason, their younger employees, physicians, partners weren't interested in coming up through and taking over the business. It'll be interesting to see, but I still think that will always be for pediatricians. I think back to when I started to practice 26 years ago, right? I think it did a lot more acute care in the office. Now I'm definitely doing much more mental health. It's not unusual for half my days to be seeing mental health patients.
So I have so many, I guess, different perspectives or things to add. Like I'm going to concur with most of everything you've said, but dissent in that. Yeah, I think a big problem is payment.
Oh, no doubt.
Length of time to train. So I won't put my part on this because I didn't play any part on this except criticize it. The academic pediatricians haven't found a fellowship that's long enough and that they don't love, even if it is to change a diaper. And so it is true. So you can be an internal medicine doctor and you want to be an allergist, you're done in 2 years. You do a fellowship.
Yep. Oh, I know. Yep.
You can be an
Yep.
emergency medicine physician, trained in emergency medicine. You can do a 2-year EM fellowship, and you're now boarded in PTM and adult emergency medicine. But if
Yep.
you're a pediatrician, you have to spend 3 years to get that subspecialty.
Exactly. Nope.
And
that,
you make
yep.
less money when you come out.
Yeah.
The pediatric endocrinologist, the pediatric nephrologist, the pediatric developmental physician, they can't stay in business. The geneticist, if you're not charging people $400 an hour for your consult, there's 1 or 2 spots at the big medical centers, and then that's it, because they don't make any money.
Yeah. So one of the pieces of this sort of larger project is education redesign. What will happen with it? I don't know what it's going to look like, but they're definitely looking at fellowships, because we know especially some of the smaller pediatric subspecialists, rheumatology, developmental pediatricians who we need, they're less and less. Is there a way to use a competency-based sort of progression system for residency? In other words, if you master competencies before some of your other peers, could you accelerate through your residency and be done sooner? And payment is huge. Until this country decides that they want to value the healthcare of young children the same as they do the healthcare of our seniors, right? It's going to continue to be an issue.
Yeah, and then my third thing is that George Haidt says, but the work balance issue is very important for young people.
Yep.
Important because we are a female-driven specialty.
Definitely.
We are the elephants in the room. We're the outliers.
Yeah.
The old white guy, you're not yet, but the old white guy is a dinosaur that's dying in pediatrics.
Yep.
So it's a woman-driven specialty, and they're smarter than we are, and they value time with their children and their spouses just as much as they value making money taking care of people.
It's interesting. So I did an interview with NPR a couple of weeks ago about what the shortage of pediatricians, and found a stat that right now about 30% of pediatric residents that go into primary care want to work part-time. It is, I will say, and this isn't, I don't mean to sound negative. I think I view pediatrics as a call. I don't view it as a job. Yeah, it's my job, and yeah, I get paid for it, but it's really a calling. And there definitely has been, not right or wrong, but there definitely has a shift in that. And part-time is part of it. Right? You look at even how residencies have changed over the year. We used to have much more continuity. When I was a resident 30 years ago, you had the same attending for an entire month. You have the same team together. You took call at night, right? Now, almost everything in PEDS residency is shift-based. I mean, you can have multiple attendings come on service, off service. You're doing a week of nights, you're doing a week of days. It's very much that sort of shift model and mentality. And I do think people that are coming out of residency and expecting that in a practice, and especially when you're in independent practice, you're never really off. God forbid you have a power outage and the refrigerators and freezers that contain your $150,000 of vaccine inventory goes out, and you bring some coolers and ice packs and schlep them to another office. That's really, I think, some of the difference. And again, I'm not saying it's right or wrong. It's where we're at today, but I do think that's a big difference.
I do think, so I think the residency programs are kinder, and maybe you learn more book science. But I remember being a resident, I went to Rush in Chicago, and there was no fellows. And when I went to residency, by 4 p.m, all the attendings were down at the bar drinking wine, because we had a piano wine bar within Rush. Okay.
Yeah.
And then they were out of there to their families. And if the kid's not dead, don't call me. The only exception was neonatology that had either one of the academic attendings or a moonlighter, a taking call. But they weren't woken up out of bed unless you can resuscitate the kid. That they signed off the charts in the mornings, and they were spent that night in their call room watching TV. But I didn't realize, I was young, I was a second-year resident, that there were patients that were so critical that the nurses called me at home, even though I had peers, other 2 and 3-year residents covering the PICU in-house. And they would call me, and they'd go, if I don't call you when you walk in the morning, this kid's going to be a total disaster. You're going to spend 6 hours fixing it because he's too brittle. This is one of those weird kids that only likes you. And it was true. There's just some of these kids that Science doesn't work. You just, there's some animal spirit that for some reason you're able to keep them from dying, and someone else walks in the room and they crash. And that continuity is so important in critical care, but it's also very important when you're dealing with diabetic, with the obese patient, with the depressed, with the anxious patient. And I'm an alpha, so I like emergency medicine, critical care. I like broken things, fixing and moving on.
Yep.
But some of the more joyous moments of my career, and I discredit to Jim Riley because he's George's obesity partner, is when you actually see a child go from 216 pounds to 177 after 6 months of working with them. And the grandmother cries and I cry and the kid hugs everybody, and no one will ever be able to take that memory away from me.
Yeah.
You can take all my money, my liberty, you can even take my toes off.
Yeah.
You won't be able to take that memory from me.
I will say, no question, patient safety is so much better than when I trained. Look, I was like you. There were many times I was in the ICU by myself and really probably shouldn't have been. And that's fantastic, right? We needed to do that, and patient safety is much, much better. Unfortunately, I think some critical thinking skills, and also, like you said, that continuity, right? It's hard to have that sort of continuity sort of mind when you're doing shift work. So that's the unfortunate trade-off with, yes, we definitely have come a long way in patient safety, but unfortunately, I think some of the experiences that prepare you for certain careers is not what it was.
So I'm a little bit more bullish. Again, it's political. I think that what Congress just passed has two wonderful things that the white coat organizations are missing out on. They extended the child credit. They increased and extended. We know that if you're going to lift children out of poverty, these cash transfers are the most effective way. And it is incredible. $1,700 makes a huge difference in the life of these children.
Oh, yeah.
Kids RX in Michigan, which is not a government-funded program that Leah works with, they transfer $1,200 to every pregnant mom in a county. Cash. She can do whatever she wants. She can buy a car seat. She can pay for the Uber ride to the OB. She can go get a massage if she wants to.
Yeah.
And the vaccination rates and the well child, and it's not means tested. Everybody in the county gets access to the $1,200. And the vaccination rates amongst the most vulnerable in the infants shoot up. And such a small investment. So that's a great gift. I think the other great gift, and now I've been a big advocate for early detection of diabetes, to be even a bigger advocate for practices to decouple from Medicaid and commercial plans and start offering their patients direct primary care, because the HSA accounts now can be used to pay for your pediatrician. And if you have a chronic illness that, whatever, Anthem says every visit, that's not true in pediatrics, but if you went to health systems, $300 for 99214. And you never know as a parent what you're going to end up paying.
Yep.
Parents would rather pay $60 every month and be able to come in twice a month if they need for the obesity care or the asthma care and get that monkey off their back. And the peds practices would make money. It would be no friction. I don't need to see you. I'm on the phone. I don't need to see you. Everything's okay. I'll see you next week. Let's chat on video, because I want to see if there's labor breathing on this kid or not. Okay. And I'm not beholden to charging and then waiting for them to give me the money back and then tell me that I missed this modifier, so I'm not getting paid for this. And the parents know what it's going to cost them.
Yeah.
And so every pediatrician, instead of setting their hair on fire, folks, the world's not going to end. Politics lasts 2 years in America and then things change. Take advantage of this HSA, grow your practice, help your families, do good medicine. We all win. And I'm very optimistic that side. The other side I'm very optimistic is AI. because George got me into using something called Free.ai, a virtual, and it's not perfect. It says it hallucinates all kinds of crazy stuff. It's a lot faster than me clicking.
Yep.
And it's not a stupid template that says nothing of what I really did or what I was worried about. So anyone else who picks up the chart after I seen it, because I'm not there, goes, oh, Herb wanted this kid to get a hemoglobin A1C every 3 months because he's concerned about this.
Yeah.
Huh, easy peasy. I got it done. And then I've been testing a new AI platform. I forgot the name, but it's done by JAMA, and it's for doctors only. And I'll put it in the show notes. And so it's not like ChatGPT, because ChatGPT is biased, because ChatGPT is looking at web content. And if CNN, MSNBC, New York Times say that the world's ending and no child's ever going to get a vaccine again, it comes into their language model.
Yep.
This one's walled off. And so it only searches medical journals.
Interesting. Okay.
And you have to have an NPI to sign up. I'll send it to you as soon as we hang up.
Yeah. No, definitely. Very interesting.
And it says it's HIPAA compliant. They didn't give me a BAA agreement, but Freed is HIPAA compliant, didn't give me a BAA agreement either. And so in theory, you could get your consultant's note in a PDF, upload it to this, and it will tell you, here's a summary of what the diabetologist is saying on this kid. Here are the gaps in care. And then it puts the references. But I'll share with you this one. I put all 12 of the 50 dysglycemic kids. I only do per diems at this practice with 2,400 kids, right? And I said to it, tell me whether there's a correlation between the elevated A1C and the BMI in these 15 kids. And what does that mean? It wrote me an article. And it compared with 4 other studies that because your N is too small to say much about it, it's only 12 patients, but it fairly well aligns with these 3 other studies that had these numbers of patients. Okay. So you can quickly close gaps.
Yep.
Great. But you have to be careful. I asked the same, I wanted to know between Beyfortus and the new Merck product.
Yep.
And it said, there is no other licensed monoclonal antibody. And so I went to the FDA website and I said, here's the link. This has been approved. So one searched it back and said, indeed, it was approved. And these are the difference between the 2 products. So I think that will allow me to do more with less effort, less time.
Yep.
And that will let me amplify my reach when in the exam room and not tire me out, because looking for an article to see if I should do this or that takes a lot of time. And
it does.
And it's the end of the evening. I'd rather have a whiskey than be searching the PubMed. Okay.
Definitely.
So I think that's maybe, and like all these things, like, are all your asthmatics on smart therapy or not?
And that's the project we're doing with the PHO, right? Is educating about that. So we're getting there. We're not all there, but we're getting there.
You could put it into some AI like this that queries it and sees which ones are not switched over to smart therapy, and then queues them up for telemedicine to tell the parents with a video, this is what we're doing now. Dr. Peltier is going to get on the show, on the TV with you, and we're going to go over this.
Yeah, definitely.
That would be great. Anyhow, we've run past the time, so I'm going to thank you for your time. And this has been a wonderful episode. Love talking to you.
Guys, this has been fantastic. I was really looking forward to it, and it was great. It was great to talk with both of you, and I look forward to keeping the conversation going.
I hope so.
All right.
Thank you for listening. This has been a production of the Pediatric Lounge. On the show notes, you will find links to our co-host and other important notes, as well as a timetable of the topics discussed today. Don't forget to follow us on social media and subscribe to wherever you listen to your podcast. Leave us a great review, as it helps us greatly. In the meantime, we will see you next week. The Pediatric Lounge. The conversations are not intended as medical advice, and the opinions expressed are solely those of the host and the guest.